Hi, and welcome to Nevaeh's Nightmare. And on this episode, we are going to be talking about the truth about the Winchester Mystery House. If you've been watching my channel, you're probably into the strange and unusual like I am, and we've all heard stories of haunted houses and ghosts, and one of the most popular being the Winchester Mystery House located in San Jose, California. The house has an elaborate hallways and that lead to nowhere, and doors on higher levels that lead outside with no balcony, and stairwells that also lead to nowhere. But why? The Winchester family originally started in shirts. In the mid-1800s, Oliver Winchester co-founded the Winchester and Davies shirt manufacturing. In the 1860s, Oliver Winchester invested in the Volcanic Repeating Arms Company. This company was responsible for the revolutionary repeating revolver. At the time, guns were very different from what they are today. Guns at the time took a very, very long time and extensive time to load. This often put the men loading their guns in an unsafe position if they were in battle. While loading the gun, the enemy could fire. The Volcanic Repeating Arms Company could have been better managed and eventually succumbed to their debts, and Oliver Winchester paid off their debts to the company and took over from there, changing the name to New Haven's Arm Company. When Oliver took over, he brought along a mechanic from the shirt company, Benjamin Henry, to design the world's first repeating rifle. The rifle could fire 15 shots in 10 seconds. With the Civil War inching closer, Oliver Winchester started pursuing government deals with the Union Army equipped with the repeating rifle. Generals were not so fond of the new weaponry because it seemed too brutal to repeatedly fire shots, so the Civil War was mainly fought with single-shot muskets and rifles. While overseas trying to sign arms deals over, Oliver Winchester made the mistake of signing the power of attorney for the company to Benjamin Henry, who wasn't particularly fond of Oliver. Henry filed to reincorporate the New Haven's Arm Company as the Henry Repeating Rifle Company while Oliver was still overseas. Oliver then turned around and withdrew all of his money from the company and established the new Winchester Repeating Arms Company. With Oliver withdrawing all of his money, Henry was left with nothing but the company's name. Oliver later paid off all of his debts and once again owned the company, ditching Henry. The Henry rifles were shortly known as the Winchester rifles. After the Civil War, there was a massive decline in the firearms market, but at the same time, the Transcontinental Railroad was completed in 1869. Oliver Winchester didn't care who he sold to. He sold to any race from any part of the world with any background. Colonizing settlers at the time took a particular liking to the Winchester rifle, but Oliver also sold rifles to the Native Americans as well. The settlers would often use the rifles as a way to enact violence against the native population. For example, this advertisement read, "For Indian bear or buffalo hunting, the Winchester rifle is unrivaled." At the time, most native populations were being cut off from their food supply due to the settlers wanting to get rid of the natives, so the natives began to stockpile the Winchester rifles. The Winchester guns were used in revolts and battles, and while the natives were firing their Winchesters, they were also getting fired from the other side. Amidst all the bloodshed, Oliver Winchester made a lot of money. The government started supplying repeating guns to their troops, but also giving guns for free to settlers moving west and cowboys. In the 1880s, books and articles were frequently published that explained the violence towards Native Americans. Due to the time, the violence on Native Americans wasn't blamed on the settlers, but the Winchester rifle themselves. Even though both should have been to blame, the Winchester Company promoted the violence for profit, but the rifle name was also used as a way to cover up the racial guilt. Later on, the gun would be promoted as the gun that won the West. Now on to Sarah Winchester. Sarah Winchester and her husband William, the son of Oliver Winchester, were rich due to the rifle, but Sarah played no role in the rifle itself. Sarah was born in 1839, and in the 1850s, she and her family moved into a house on the same street as the Winchesters, and the two households became very close. Sarah's father was a carpenter, so she was surrounded by craftsmen and woodsworkers. Sarah loved and was fascinated with their work, and her love for this was something she never outgrew. Sarah's parents raised her with an open mind and allowed her to lead an unorthodox life and choose her own ideals. Sarah, though a modest and keen woman, did, in her own way, choose her own ideals. Sarah had met William Wirt Winchester when they were kids and neighbors. William was raised as the successor for the family fortune, but didn't have as much drive compared to his father. William also had poor health. William and Sarah got married in 1862 during the Civil War. Sarah became pregnant in 1865 and gave birth the next year, naming her daughter Annie. Annie struggled to feed and keep food down and was diagnosed with marasmus at just a month old. Annie passed away from starvation, and Sarah and William moved into a life of seclusion, and a few years later, Sarah also lost her father. Sarah and William built a home in New Haven, and with the construction of this home, Sarah and William both became infatuated with architecture. But in May of 1880, Sarah also lost her mother, and in December, Oliver Winchester died. In March of 1881, William Winchester died of long-time tuberculosis. Sarah found herself in a deep grieving state and also with a lot of money. Sarah had found herself with money from her mother's estate, but also from Oliver and William. Sarah had inherited thousands of shares of stocks and bonds, as well as real estate and a $300,000 trust. Also around $9 to $10 million today in today's currency. Sarah had no interest in the arms company, so Sarah let the company fall into others who were trusted. Once the business matters and funerals were taken care of, Sarah retreated to the seaside to let herself grieve. Sarah, being done with the lifestyle of New Haven, decided to move out to California, which at the time was being advertised everywhere. Sarah invited her sisters Belle, Estelle, and their older sister Nettie. Sarah and her sisters began to place their roots in what is now San Jose, California. In 1894, Sarah's sister Estelle passed away due to an addiction that made her liver fail. Belle, one of Sarah's sisters, started construction on a home, and Sarah helped her in the construction. Sarah regained her spark for architectural design. At the time, people were trying to communicate with the dead, and it was normal to seek out mediums or other methods of spirit communication. At the time, and in Sarah's social class, it would have been seen as normal if she were to seek out spirit communication. But there is nothing for a fact that says Sarah went out and spoke to mediums, but many articles and books report Sarah visiting a medium, but there is still no evidence of this medium even existing. What we do know is that Sarah put her emotions into her architectural creativity, and in 1886 she purchased a 2-story farmhouse on Los Gatos Road. Sarah recreated cultural gardens at her home so she could enjoy tea and picnics with her sisters. Sarah, at the time, had nothing but time and more money than she knew what to do with, and she would often have things built onto the house and then would change her mind and tear it down, then rebuild. Sarah really didn't plan out any of her building and just built whatever she felt like. Sarah even has explained her home as rambling. Sarah Winchester also, upon contrary belief, gave her workers extended breaks, like having months off from building. Sarah had no more work done to the house after 1906. With this giant and elaborate house, Sarah attracted some attention, and all Sarah wanted was her privacy. After Sarah refused to hold a party for 2 separate presidents, people began to treat Sarah differently and eventually made fun of her. Reporters would write that Sarah was highly superstitious and snobby, she feared death, and that she was consumed by guilt from all of those who had been killed by the Winchester rifle. People began to call Sarah Winchester crazy, saying she was haunted by ghosts and obsessed with the occult and its practices. Needless to say, Sarah was just a woman who wanted her peace, and the rumors about her being haunted by ghosts were just rumors. But it didn't help that Sarah never denied any of the false publicity that was being told. On April 18, 1906, around 5 a.m., a 7.8 earthquake hit San Francisco. The earthquake killed 3,000 people and started massive fires. Closer to the Winchester house, 2 60,000-gallon water tanks collapsed from the earthquake, and the house suffered damages. Sarah cleaned the rubble and fixed major fixtures, but left the rest of the damaged house alone. The doors and stairwells that led to nowhere were built after the flooding. With Sarah not fully fixing the house, it makes sense. Doors that led to nowhere once had balconies and stairwells that went into another part of the house. Sarah stated, "It looks as though it had been built by a crazy person." The house doesn't look bizarre because Sarah was trying to confuse ghosts. It looks bizarre due to the testament of a natural disaster. In the end, the controversy of Sarah Winchester and her spirits just isn't true. Everyone who had met Sarah personally said that she was never mad or strange. When Sarah became older and her health wasn't as well, Sarah hired workers from all around her property to help her. The workers Sarah hired were all people of Asian descent. These workers lived on the property with their families and cared about Sarah a lot. Rumors once again began spreading that Sarah was performing rituals with her help, but I don't see how that would be possible considering her rapidly declining health. In 1922, Sarah began to tie up her finances and pay her workers, and on September 5th, Sarah Winchester passed away. In the end, Sarah gave most of her money to the William Wirt Winchester Hospital, and the Winchester house was leased by John and Mamie Brown, who saw the house as a money-making opportunity and labeled the house as the Mystery House. Most of the strange things that happened in the house were added after the Winchesters' passing. In the end, I don't think Sarah Winchester was crazy or built this elaborate house for ghosts. I think she was just a woman who loved architecture and experienced a natural disaster and just didn't want to fix it. But let me know what you think down below in the comments. Was she actually a crazy lady who was haunted by ghosts, or did she just like architecture and like building her house? Let me know what you think down below. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next video.